I had enough people request for me to go ahead and show my grinding process for processing entire quail for dog food. Figured I'd go ahead and shoot video while I do this. So I've got my grinder out here. I've got a cutting board. I've got a cleaver. This was actually, it's kind of dirty because I already ground one up just to do some testing stuff. But we're going to get to the rest of them here in just a second. This cleaver was my grandfather's cleaver, actually. He owned a grocery store before I was ever born, years before I was born. And this was one of the cleavers he used to process meat in the grocery store. And this is probably a 100-year-old cleaver. So I sharpened it up a little bit. I can use that for, if they're too big to go down through the chute, kind of chop them in smaller pieces to go down through the meat grinder. So if you're not familiar with the meat grinders, I'll kind of show you how this is all set up. This is probably the most economical one I could find that would actually process bone. It will process small bones like chicken legs. It'll grind those up just fine. Turkey's a little bit on the big side, so you probably wouldn't be able to do that, but it'll do rabbit, it'll do quail, it'll do like squirrel, those kinds of things, and it'll actually grind the bone. So that's what we're going to be using. We'll start off with a wagon wheel plate, basically. It's a pretty big grind. Get that ground through, and then I'll do a second pass through a smaller plate. And I'll show you that here when we get to it. So the only problem with this grinder, I'll put this in my Amazon shop. If you're interested in a grinder that's fairly inexpensive compared to other models that will do bone. The nice things about this grinder is it does have, you can see kind of the buttons here. So it's got a low setting, a high setting, and a reverse. So if you get stuck, you can push that reverse the stuff back up a little bit, and then push back through. That's incredibly helpful. And one really nice thing about it, it's got a foot pedal down here to run it with. Right there, I've got it on the ground. So you can run it with the foot pedal. You don't have to be touching it with your, greasy, nasty hands after they've been in all this grind. And you just hit the foot pedal and it goes, and it turns off. So that's pretty good. Let me get the other parts here real quick. Okay, so it actually comes with a whole lot more parts than this, but this is what we're going to need to grind with. We've got the auger, basically. It's pretty simple. It goes in here. We've got the blade. You do want to make sure the blade is facing the right direction, facing out with the sharp parts out. This one's pretty good because it's got, it only goes on one way, so you can't really mess that up. The blade goes on, then the plate, the grinding plate. There's a little notch there that fits it in, so you can't get it in wrong. And then the front, which will twist on. You don't want to crank that down really hard, you'll never get it off. But just snug is all you need. It goes in here. We're going to tighten up this wheel right here. The handle, that'll keep it all secure. And this is basically the size that I need to be able to get things down through. So I may have to cut, some of these quail were pretty good size. I may have to chop them down to smaller pieces. And we've got a plate to kind of fit it in there. And then the last thing, oh, there we go. The stopper to push. You don't want to get your fingers in there. If it grabs a hold of your finger, it's you're gonna be sorry you had it in there. So let me get a couple of birds here. Let me get some gloves on. We'll get to grinding. Oh, I need a bowl too. There we go, a bowl to catch everything in. And there's not a whole lot to this. Some people asked when I processed these birds and said I was going to be using them for dog food. Some people are asking, are you going to grind them with feathers on and everything? Yeah, I'm going to grind them with the feathers on because the feathers are a really good source of fiber for dogs. Now, you may notice I got a whole bunch of hamburger over here thawing and some other stuff because my dog does not want to eat quail only. He'll eat it when it's mixed in with things. So this is going to be a way for us to extend. We're raw feeding the dog. So this is a way for us to extend kind of basically what we have to buy from the store. We'll bulk it up. This will be about 30% when we finish up of the total mixture. We're going to make about 30 days worth of dog food here. So I've got some other things here just to kind of give you a brief rundown. Check some other resources. I'm not necessarily an expert on raw feeding dogs, but we follow what's called the BARF method. So it is roughly 80% lean muscle meat, and it's going to be hamburger this time. We switch that out. Sometimes we use pork, sometimes we use turkey, sometimes we use chicken. This time we're going to be using hamburger. We got a good sale on this. So ground beef, this is already ground. I just got to thaw it out and mix it. So 80% lean muscle meat, and then about 10% bone, which is, we're going to be using chicken legs for that. And we're just going to grind them whole. Those are roughly 27% bone. There's a great site that will give you kind of a breakdown of how much you need of everything called rawdogfoodcalculator.com. You go in there and you plug in what your meaty bone is going to be, whether it's going to be chicken legs or whole ground rabbit, with the bone, or whatever, and it will basically tell you how much, what weight of everything that you need to be able to get the right amount. We feed the dog, I'm kind of rambling here, but I'll get back up. We feed the dog roughly 2% of his ideal body weight. He's about 65 pounds, so that's about 1.3 pounds per day that he's going to be fed. So anyway, let me back up. It's 80% 80% lean muscle meat, and again, that's hamburger, 10% bone, which we're going to use chicken legs. They're about 27%, so you do the math. The other 70% of that is lean muscle meat. We'll mix that in with the hamburger, and it'll come out to about a 10% ratio of bone. And you can just kind of watch your dog's stool. If it looks real chalky, you want to cut back on the amount of bone you're giving them. If it's like greasy and kind of, I know that's disgusting, but if it's kind of greasy on the greasy side, a little bit more bone will help dry it up just a little bit. And then the other 10%, so we're at 90% roughly. The other 10% is going to be split between liver. We use beef liver and another secreting organ. And what I was able to get at my local grocery store, one of them is pig brains. That's a good secreting organ. So other things would be like kidney or tripe. If you can get, you don't want to buy washed, bleached tripe, but if you can get raw tripe, that would be a good mix. There's other things it could be. You can look it up and kind of figure it out on your own. And then we're going to throw, this is going to be about like I said, a little over 30 pounds worth of food for him, because it's roughly it's like 27 days worth of food, something like that. So we're going to be throwing about this is like 1.5 pounds of pumpkin in there. This will add some fiber, help him make sure he's moving regularly. The feathers on the quail have enough fiber in them. The quail themselves, we're grinding them whole. So those are considered a whole diet. We don't have to add anything to that to get that up to diet. So we can just mix it in with the regular food, and it's fine on its own, if that makes sense. You could feed it, if your dog will eat it, you could feed it just that, and you wouldn't have to add anything. Now, to this addition, every day he's going to get a kelp supplement and a vitamin E supplement, because those are usually deficient in homemade recipes. Unless you're feeding whole prey, they're usually a little bit deficient in iodine, which comes from the kelp, and vitamin E. The other thing would be manganese, which we typically will every day we'll throw about like 2 mussels, New Zealand mussels. I just buy them frozen at my local Walmart. Throw 2 of those in there, chop them up real fine and mix them in, because he doesn't really like those either. But that gives him the manganese that he needs every day. So that's it. So we're going to work on getting these things ground up. So let me get a couple of birds out here, and we'll get to it. I don't think you need to watch me do them all, but you can watch me do 1 or 2 of them. And like I said, this will be a double grind. So I'm going to grind them all, and all the chicken legs that I have, and then we'll go back through and do a double grind on them through a smaller plate to make sure there's not a bunch of bone shards in there that could hurt him or something like that. So let me grab a few birds and we'll get to going. Okay, these are mostly frozen. I don't think they'll fit. Yeah, that doesn't fit down through there. So they're a little bit on the bigger side. If you were going to be growing these out for dog food every time, you probably want to process them a little bit earlier, probably like 5 weeks or something like that. And that might help with getting them a little bit smaller. You can just fit them down through there without having to chop them in half. So this is going to be kind of gross, and it might be a little bit loud. They're still somewhat frozen. I can maneuver them, but they're still somewhat frozen, and that will help with the grinding process. So let me get to this real quick. A cleaver works really well for that. You might be able to get away with a pair of kitchen shears or something like that, and if it'll fit down through there, which it looks like it will, then we're good to go. So let's get the grind on. It's not one, it's just kind of cramming together. So sometimes, there it goes. Sometimes the grinders will, they have a hard time getting going once they grab a hold of it and finally get it. Okay, so there's one bird down. We'll do one more, and then I can kind of do the rest of these off camera probably, but I'm gonna have to cut it in half again. And then right through the grinder. I'm not sure that's gonna fit. I'm gonna have to cut that one again. Kind of gross, but this is the way it goes. And that's it. I mean, that's 2 birds down. There's still some stuck in here. We'll deal with that here in just a moment, but kind of disgusting. But you know, that's kind of what we're left with right there, is just a kind of a mix of a grind right here. So let me get the rest of these done, and then I'll come back on camera. We'll show you what the next steps are. Okay, down to the last bird here. We've got a pretty good bull over there, so again, this is gonna be kind of loud. Got to chop them up in some smaller pieces so they'll go through the grinder. I don't know if that'll fit through there. Let's find out. Will it fit? Yeah, the wing off, it'll fit. It'll fit. So last quail going through the grinder now. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to grab a hold of that, and sometimes it helps to hit this reverse button. Now if I can reach it, I'm reaching around the wrong side. Give me a minute. There we go. Good grief. Got it all dirty anyway, didn't I? Few bumps in reverse, and then go back. All right, so that is pretty much 8 pounds of ground up quail. And like I said, I'm going to be going through and doing another grind on this, but I need to do the same thing with the chicken legs, so I'm going to go ahead and dump this in. I've got a big container back here. You may be able to see it, you may not. Dump this in here, grind my chicken legs real quick, mix it all, or then go back through and do the next grind and mix it all together. So I got to empty out my bowl because it's too full. This is all getting mixed together, so it doesn't matter. And then I've just got a whole bunch of chicken legs here that I have partially frozen. I may have to cut some of them down a little bit too, because they always go through the grinder just a little bit better if they're a little on the cold side, a little bit frozen. So same process, we're just going to stick the chicken leg in there and get the grinding. Cut some of these down a little bit though. Tell you what, this cleaver makes it pretty handy. If I can hit the target, it makes it handy anyway. There, they'll go through a little bit easier now. Got a whole bunch of chicken legs to do here. You don't necessarily need to watch me do them all. You got to see a couple of them. That's kind of how the process goes. Cut them down a little bit, feed them through the grinder. Once I get these all through the coarse grind, I'll be back with you and we'll go from there. All right, so I've got that done. So I need to change my blade out, or my plate, to a smaller plate. I've got all my ground up chicken legs and my ground up quail in this tub right here. And I'm just going to be doing a second grind through a finer plate. Get those bones broke up just a little bit more so they're not any big sharp shards of bone or something. This is kind of gross. If you've never done this before, I need to hang on just one second. I got to find something to dig this out of here with. But there's going to be a lot of stuff kind of hung up in here. And it's just part of grinding meat. There we go, that'll work. There we go, got it off there. Okay, so take all this stuff, put it in here, send it back through. Okay. Now I will say the only bad thing about this grinder is it is made, all these parts are aluminum, which means when you wash them, you got to dry them. You can't just let them, you don't want to let them sit and soak in the sink or anything like that. They'll start to get discolored pretty bad and get pretty yucky. So wash them off, dry them real good. So we're going to wait to wash this thing until I get the next grind done, because I don't want to have to take a break and dry it. But I can set it off to the side. Alright, and I couldn't tell you exactly what size this plate is. It's next to the smallest one I got, so we're just trading it out. There we go. Put my over here at the side. All right, we are ready for the second grind. And I'm going to be kind of mixing this stuff together as I go, because this will go a whole lot faster. It's already ground up once, so it'll go a whole lot faster, and I'm going to mix it anyway, so it's just going to kind of get mixed. You got it. Okay, so be quiet for a second. All right, so I've ground up all that chicken, all that quail. There's a lot of grinding. Got them through their second pass. I went ahead and did 1.5 pounds of beef liver and 1.5 pounds of pork brains. I didn't actually show that process because it's the same. But the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to feed about 4 ice cubes through here, and that's going to help kind of clean this out, push everything out that's that's stuck in there. So it's going to be a little loud. This goes into my tub to be mixed in. So this is not going to be pleasant, but this is where we're at. All I got to do now, hang on, let me turn around so I'm talking at the camera. Okay, all I've got to do now is we've got 10 pounds of hamburger that's going to go in there, and then that will be, it's just portioning it out from that point. So I got to get my hamburger defrosted though, because I mean it's already ground up. I don't have to grind it, but it's still frozen. So I got to get it defrosted. I got to get all this stuff cleaned up. So I'll be back with you guys here in just a little bit. It'll be just a second or two on camera, but for me it'll be, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. Go ahead and turn it off. All right, so that was a little bit of a chore, but got it done. So we got the 10 pounds of hamburger in here, and now we're going to dump a can of pumpkin. This is 29 ounces of pumpkin in here. And then I got to mix it all together, which is the least favorite part, but I'll wait till I get some gloves on, just dig that out with my hand. But anyway, just mix it all together basically. So let me kind of run through the recipe that we're using here. There's a base recipe that we normally use, which is, well, I shouldn't say normally, it depends on what meat we're using, but the base recipe for this is 9 pounds of chicken legs, roughly 9 pounds, 10 pounds of hamburger, and then we've got 1.5 pounds of liver and 1.5 pounds of pork brains. You could substitute the pork brains with another secreting organ like kidney or something like that, but 1.5 pounds of each one of those, and that's basically an 80-10-10, or 80, you know, oh yeah, and I'm sorry, the 29 ounces of pumpkin. So it's basically an 80-10-10 ratio, 80% lean meat, 10% bone, 10% organ, which is split 5% liver, 5% another secreting organ, and then the pumpkin for some extra fiber, 29 ounces of that for this. That's like, I don't know, that's like a 7-8% vegetable mix. So then I'm just going to mix all this together. You don't necessarily need to watch me put some gloves on. I'm just going to mix it all together, and then we'll be portioning it out. Let me grab my container. So these are the containers that we use. We'll be putting them, my dog's a 65-pound dog. He needs about 2% of body weight per day to maintain his weight. He's not overweight. He's really pretty much an ideal weight right now. So that comes out to roughly 20.8 ounces per day. So we'll pack these 20.8 ounces. He'll get half in the morning, half in the evening. And then the only other thing we add in is, let me grab it. So once a day, like I said, the mussels, I don't have the mussels right now. They're frozen, cooked mussels. You don't want to mix them in beforehand because there is, I can't remember what it is, but there is something that can deplete nutrients in the food if it's mixed in beforehand. So we add those in at feeding time. He gets 2 mussels per day, chopped up real fine and then just mixed in. We add this vitamin E oil, 1 drop of vitamin E oil per day. And one of these kelp pills, these are just, what are they, 320 mcg, I don't know what that is, micrograms of kelp that gives him the iodine he needs. We just break that open and pour that over the food, and he eats it just fine. I do throw in usually about 4 or 5 quail eggs once a day as well in the mornings, and then I put the supplements in at night. That's about it. So let me get this all mixed up. And I don't guess you actually need to see the rest of this. We're just going to portion it out in these little containers. It goes in the freezer. I have usually 3 of them in the fridge, 2 of them thawing, and then 1 for the feeding for the day. When I feed him that day, I take another one out of the freezer, stick it on the bottom, and rotate through them that way. And this should be about almost 30 days worth of food for him. So it's a little bit of work, but you know, all in all, I think it does make for a healthier dog. It means he hopefully will live a little bit longer, be able to you know, overcome some of those issues that a lot of dogs have. So far, it has not made a huge difference in his allergies. He has bad skin allergy problems. Haven't noticed that. His coat does look good though. He's over here laying down. I'd get him on camera, but it's a little bit tricky to do. And you guys, if you've been following the channel, you've seen him plenty of times. So anyway, I guess I'll wrap this video up here. I just need to get this stuff mixed up, portioned out, you don't necessarily need to see that. You have to see what you wanted. I will put the link to my grinder down below, and I'll add it to my Amazon. Actually, I'll probably just add it to my Amazon shop. You can just go to my Amazon shop and get it. So far it works great. It's a great little grinder. If you want to spend a little bit more money, you could get one that was stainless steel, that you don't have to worry about drying completely before you could let it soak. You don't want to put these parts in water because they're aluminum. You don't want to just let them sit and soak in water. You need to wash them and then dry them thoroughly right after you wash them. So that's the only downside. But it's a fairly cheap grinder, and it works really well. It goes right through those chicken bones and rabbit bones and all those kinds of things. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I had enough people ask for it. I thought I'd go ahead and shoot it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, God bless.